through the agenda today and just looked for the typos because we went through it so quick
Oh,
getting
yeah,
it set it
right,
up.
right. I
That
was
it was,
surprised I didn't get it.
yeah, yeah.
But these are your mistakes.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
By the way, we got a finding, I'm trying to think who told us from Jeff, that McMiniman was correct. And the bond counsel doesn't need to provide you don't need the schedule of insurance or the indemnification of the contract.
Interesting.
Rock, you guys ready?
In any-
Jeannie?
in any-
Jeannie, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right,
Yes.
very good. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the City of Millville work session for January 3rd, 2017, 4 p.m. Happy New Year to everyone. Call to order, please.
Okay, so
Roll call.
Mayor Santiago,
Here.
Commissioner Ennis, Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Campari,
Here.
and Commissioner Sui.
Here.
We all stand, salute the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This meeting is being conducted in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act of 1975, was advertised, posted, and made available to the public as required by the law. The municipal clerk is directed to include a statement in the minutes of this meeting. Madam Clerk, are there any review changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor. Well, first of all, Commissioner Ennis is unable to attend work sessions due to a conflict with his work schedule. I wanted to make that announcement. And also, there has been a resolution added to authorize an executive session this evening.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's
Thank
it.
you. We now open up the mic for public comment on agenda items only. Anyone that would like to speak on an agenda item, please step up to the mic, state your name, limit your comments to 5 minutes, please. Seeing no one, I close the public comment portion on the agenda items only. Old business, Madam Clerk.
We have an amendment to the noise pollution ordinance as a discussion item.
Yeah,
Rock?
there was you'll recall that I prepared a draft ordinance, which in essence was verbatim the state model noise ordinance, which contains 2 optional provisions in it. And it was introduced at the last meeting, and we had a comment by a member of the public to the effect that the ordinance would make it difficult for people in the landscaping business to conduct their business. Since that section was an optional section, the revised model noise ordinance has that specific section. It's actually a subsection is deleted. There also, I think, since that time, there have been some emails that I've seen from members of the public, I think to the mayor, which were provided to me, and I think also to Commissioner Campari that I reviewed. One of the questions was, well, there's nothing in here that says law enforcement can enforce this. Well, they can, because there's 2 different categories. There's someone that's certified, and then there's someone that's not certified. The police would be someone that's not certified. The only thing they couldn't enforce would be something that requires measuring noise with a decibel meter, and the police don't carry those around anyway. So I don't think that's a problem. A suggestion was also made by this member of the public that we could change the times and make other changes in the ordinance, and that's okay with the DEP. And that's not what, I mean, that's what the website seems to suggest, but when you actually talk to the DEP, they really frown on any change. And in fact, they make the clerk sign a petition that there haven't been any changes in the ordinance other than, that you're changing the designations when you incorporate it into your code. So I also would point out that the city previously submitted something different than the model noise ordinance to the DEP, and it was disapproved. And if you look at the DEP website, it says City of Millville noise ordinance disapproved. So my suggestion would be that you not make changes to the language of the sample noise ordinance, except if there are other provisions you think that are optional that could be deleted, we could simply delete those. I think there's one that might apply to, just a property owner operating power equipment on their property. That could also be deleted if you wanted to delete that.
But what are the chances of someone going by and writing these people a summons for, I mean, we're talking about lawnmowers. We're talking about blowers,
Yeah.
correct? That's what was brought up. It hasn't happened since I've been here. I don't know, have you guys, anybody here received a summons for running their blower, their leaf blower?
No, but why not?
Just change it?
Why not just delete that part and avoid a possible problem down the road? Unless there's a good reason not to delete that part, I guess.
What's impulsive sound mean? Is that 52-76? Is that what we're talking about?
No, that's one of the non-optional provisions.
Okay, so that has to stay.
So that's something that the state has defined. I think the section that Commissioner Sui is talking about would be, and I have it here, would be under 5278, restricted uses and activities. All of these provisions are optional, and I think the A provides excluding emergency work, power tools, home maintenance tools, landscaping, and it goes on to say that you can't operate them between certain hours unless they meet certain decibel levels. I mean, that provision could simply be eliminated. The state allows you to eliminate that. It's optional. So I think if Mayor, if what you're saying is there really isn't a problem in Millville with people operating leaf blowers, then maybe that's a provision that's not appropriate for Millville. Maybe that would be more appropriate for Haddonfield or some other place that's more,
Right.
different than Millville is.
Any other questions?
No, I'm just looking at A and B. I like A and B to have those options in. In paragraph C, it says, no nighttime work on roadways or bridges, which a lot of times the state does work, has work done at nighttime on purpose. So that would seem to be kind of unenforceable anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that C could be eliminated, A could be eliminated.
I don't have, well,
He's worried about this, but is that the same thing?
what's the matter with A? Why would we eliminate A?
He wants it to change to 7 a.m. instead of 8 a.m.
Right. The times for yard maintenance should be 7 a.m. instead of 8, so leaving that in makes it 7 a.m., correct?
No, he wants it change, it's 8 now, correct?
But leaving
Yeah.
paragraph A in changed it to 7, is that correct?
Has to be
No, or
seven.
am I reading that backwards?
He's saying should be. He wants to
Yeah.
make, it should
Oh,
be
okay, I
7
got you.
instead of
All right.
8.
I mean, Millville also has a lot of farms, and so you have people that are need to operate equipment, and that might be something that would be appropriate to a more urban area and not to a rural area. And Millville does have rural areas.
So you're changing that to 7 then?
Well, I mean, you could change it to 7. Now, I don't know what that does to the process of getting an approval from the DEP.
That's what I'm
I think it may sit over there for a while.
All
and
right,
you may,
then just, you want to, yeah,
I would suggest if there's a problem with the hours that you strike that.
just get rid of paragraph
Yeah.
A completely?
Yeah.
And then how about paragraph B?
We just strike that too.
I mean, that's the kind of thing I think that you would see more frequently down at the shore, where people are paying a lot of money for a rental, and they don't want to hear the house next door being, power saw. I don't know that that's a problem in Millville. I mean, you really could strike that, and I don't think it would really diminish this ordinance very much.
Okay.
So C has to be taken out too.
C applies to snow removal equipment. That would be a snow blower. If you're looking at the revised ordinance, if you're looking at the original one, there would be, because we eliminated B, subsection B in the original ordinance.
Okay.
The revised one, C, is motorized snow removal equipment. Just says it has to be operated with a muffler.
other questions? Okay, thank you, Brock.
So then I
Discussion?
think the consensus is that this needs to go back to the drawing board, and we also need to take out A, which talks about regulating homeowners from using power
Right,
tools. That's
right.
not appropriate to Millville. And B, which talks about when you can do construction activity, we'll strike that as well.
A and B, okay.
Okay.
So then that'll need to be, I don't know, if we probably could introduce it as amended,
This evening.
but I don't think we can approve this.
So it should go to the next meeting
Yeah.
then? Okay.
The
Yeah.
clerk and I had a discussion about that because it's an amendment. So if we
Okay.
could introduce it as amended,
Tonight,
I'll make the changes, and then it'll be ready for
the 17th.
adoption at the next meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Discussion of commissioners. Commissioner Davis.
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Sui?
Yeah, two things. First of all, the trash ordinance. I asked for that to be changed to 3 o'clock. I don't know where we're at with that.
I haven't done that yet because I was doing the
Okay,
professional services contracts.
okay, so we can get that for the next meeting.
And that would be the trash can be put out as early as 3 o'clock rather than 4 o'clock. Is that correct,
Rather
Commissioner?
than 5 o'clock, I think it is now, isn't it?
It's 5, so it moves up.
It
You
moves
can
up
put
to
it out
3.
2 hours earlier.
Yes. Other than that, the structural engineer will be here, I think, tomorrow to look at the warehouse at 15th Street for the solar panels. And if we could have the engineer's report. Catch you off guard, Wayne?
Thank you, Commissioner, for allowing us to give our update on our current list of projects. On Rhonda Drive, I apologize, we haven't made any more progress on the hydraulic profile, on evaluating the option of going up Rhonda with the outfall versus replacing the outfall that was found to have the flat and back slope through the cross drain in Maletta property and out to Cedar Lane. I'd like to go into the South Jersey Gas, their accelerated infrastructure replacement program. We've been doing a lot of work with them on restoration of the roadways. Starting on December 27th, we did a restoration on Route 49. We mill and paved over 1,800 linear feet of roadway over that holiday, varying widths, 18 to 12 feet. We finished on Route 49. We went on to Maurice and Mulford Street. We mill and paved 550 feet, I believe, on Maurice. We jumped over to 6th, 7th, and 8th. Tomorrow, we're starting on High Street from the Lavoie Theater, milling one width, probably 12 feet wide for a whole block, and mill and pave there. Then we're jumping onto Smith Street and High in front of City Hall. On Smith Street, it's 550 linear feet, I believe, right out to, or is it 380, right, Brian? 380 out to 2nd Street for 18 feet. We just approved their traffic plan early this afternoon. We reviewed it with traffic safety, so we're continuing to work with South Jersey Gas on the restoration of the roadways. We do have a permit meeting we're trying to schedule. Unfortunately, South Jersey Gas couldn't meet the meeting for tomorrow. They asked us to reschedule for Friday, so we'll follow up with that. That's over the permit fees that we believe are owed by South Jersey Gas to the city. So we'll continue to work forward on that. 15th Street Public Works Facility, Brian has an update on the fencing and the gates, right, Brian?
Yes. The contractor, he's ordered his remaining materials. Final gate on 15th Street is going to be a double slide gate. We're going to set a date to meet and lay that out, and that should be the final big piece of that. Pending the weather, if we get a good stretch in there, it could be finished possibly next week. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Thank you, The Buck Street sewer main, we've made no further progress on the Buck Street relining of the sewer main. We'll try and keep pushing forward on that. Wastewater treatment plant phase 2 has been consuming probably about a little more than half my time right now. I was down there this morning meeting with the General Superintendent, Fred Papernick. Maybe as early as next week, we might be cutting the access opening into the old solids storage tank in the solids building. There's an access overhead door getting cut into that. As we're converting that old tank, which has pretty much been sitting empty since 1992. We're converting that into a sludge processing room. So that's a big part of the project. We'll be starting there. We took the drawings up to the construction department. We're waiting for the permits to be issued. If they're not issued in time, we'll be holding off on that work. We received the first SED plan and a narrative. We forwarded it to the DEP. The contractor's asking for a reduction in the 10% goal based on the specialized equipment on the project. The reduction is for over $3 million, which brings the total SED goal down to $400 and some thousand. They haven't submitted the proper backup yet for that request. I've asked them to follow up with the itemized list of the equipment. We could forward that to DEP as well once that's received. I did meet with the Daily Journal, did come down to the plant today to get a tour to see the construction, but nothing has happened yet, so there wasn't much for them to see as of yet. So they may come back in a couple of weeks. High Street paving, Dave Battistini was in today. We talked to Dave about the work he's going to be doing on that. He's going to be doing the individual handicap ramp designs. He won't be able to get to that this week. He'll be on that next week. He's working on, what is it, the detention basin, Brian? Tomasello will have a report ready for us by the end of the week or a couple days for that. Ware Avenue demolition, we reached out to Gary Clark from Delphi. They still have to go over there and fine grade the demolition site. I do have a list of all the demolition areas. We're keeping a track, close eye on them, what they're doing. I have a list. I can give it to you, Commissioner, if you'd like to have the list. Well, I can't find it right now, but I'll bring it up to you after the meeting. I have a specific list of what they're doing and when they're doing it. So we are keeping track on Gary.
Wayne, before you move on with Delphi, have you spoken to them since the holidays?
We spoke to them today.
Okay, they tore down the house at 415 Mulberry, and they have a hole there. There's material to fill the hole in, but the hole's still there.
Yeah, that hole's not going to be backfilled until it dries up. They didn't want to backfill the wet soils into the hole. We are on top of that.
I got you. Now, how soon are they coming back for 409 and 411?
I have that on my list, but I can't locate it right now. I apologize, Commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah. Here it is.
Because now those dwellings are wide open. They prepped them for demolition, removed everything.
What was that address?
409, 411 Mulberry.
409 East Mulberry. The asbestos has been removed. Structure's still standing, but ready to come down. Back on site tomorrow is what they're saying for that one.
Good.
Yeah.
Tear them down.
Yeah, we have every property listed here. We're keeping track of them. I could give you a copy of this. You want to give that to the Commissioner, Brian? South Millville water main replacement. The Columbine project has been completed for quite some time. We did do a final change order, even though the final contract amount was below the bid amount. There were some differing site conditions in the beginning. There was an 8-inch unmarked South Jersey gas main that held up the contractor for probably a half a day. We had to have South Jersey Gas come in and drill and tap it. to make sure it was offline. Then we had to cut it out of the way. So there was that delay, but the resulting, contract amount was still low because there were some services that we didn't need to install. We had extra services on the job. So we are doing a final change order for that project. I have it written up and we'll be submitting it probably this week. And then it'll have to go to the board for approval. Even though I just thought it was appropriate to have a change order since there was a differing site condition. Wastewater treatment plant operations. I'm sure the board's well aware that we're still struggling down there with nocardia filaments. I've instructed the operations staff to utilize the jet vac to start, removing the foam from the tanks and, work with the floating skimmer they just purchased, surface wasting, and, start chlorinating the returns and the RAS return, the filtrate lines to try and eliminate, the food source for this filamentous bacteria. It's been there since the beginning of November. It is a hazard to the plant staff. So we're exercising extreme caution while working on the tanks. We're continuing to work our way through that. We will have a letter going out this week about one of the businesses in the city, a restaurant that didn't have a grease trap. It's things like that feed this kind of filamentous bacteria. And that's just a small part, but on the other end, there's whole apartment complexes that don't have grease interceptors, and they also are a food source for this kind of thing.
So are the apartments supposed to have the grease traps on them?
I don't think it's in our ordinance right now, so we're going to have to do an ordinance amendment to require them to have a grease interceptor.
Over so many units?
Yeah, so we're going to have to work through that somehow. I don't know how many apartments there are that don't have them. I know the one by the high school is a source of grease in the system across the street from the high school. Yeah, so that's a problem area. One of the first questions from the DEP, their chief biologist, operational biologist, is coming down next week, the 13th. He asked me about our industrial or upkeep, our pre-treatment, and those are the kind of things we need to get on. Those grease sources.
So is that just adding a sentence in the ordinance then?
Didn't
Can we just do that?
start to draft
We
a
did
section?
We did start the draft that. Then we got sidetracked on other issues. We'll have to get it back up and
There may
running.
be a draft floating
I
around.
think there is a draft I sent you probably before, and then we got sidetracked somehow.
Yeah.
And then are the inspections being done or they're not being done?
Wayne's been going out. I spoke to him after the last meeting. After we spoke, then I had him start going back out to do more inspections. We really need to focus for the operations, on the restaurants, any food processing, those kind of things.
Because that restaurant had never been inspected then. If there was never a grease trap, since it's been open, it had never been.
I don't know the answer to that, but I know it doesn't have a grease trap. Yeah.
So, okay. So probably should never have gotten approval to be a restaurant then.
Yeah, I don't think any restaurant should be allowed to not have a grease interceptor of some sort, either under the counter or, an outside structure in the line.
So,
Should have something.
so then that should be checked. That would be in a city ordinance? Or
Yeah,
what?
that would be in that, I think that is addressed in that draft ordinance.
Right.
that we did.
Right.
It is or is it?
It's not in the present ordinance?
I don't think so, no.
I don't think it's in
Even the
there.
restaurants aren't in the present one then? All right, so that's got to be added too when you do that.
But I'll get back on that tomorrow, Brock, and look at that.
I'll look it
Yeah.
up on my end, too.
What are utility operations? Again, it's nice to say there's nothing to report. That's a relief. They're continuing to work on the lead copper, the rules, coming up with the sampling plans and all the language necessary for the DEP. The fire hydrant report is the same as it was the last meeting, even though there was a fire hydrant hit by a car taken out of service. The water utility, placed it back online. So the hydrant report is the same as it was. I think it's 0.41% out of service. There's still the parts are still at Geisinger Avenue for the recall on the American Darlings. The contractor was coming in and he called, he, put it off a little bit. All we can do is keep calling them, since we're not, we don't have any authorization or payment over them. They're working right for American Darling. We'll just keep hounding them to get them to do the work.
Wayne, I had a phone call from a resident on Harrison Avenue. I guess there's a bad hydrant on Harrison and Homestead, I think it is.
Okay.
Is there any way we can light a fire under these people to get them moving? I know that it's not our people doing the work, but
Yeah, we'll find out. They're all important,
I told
yeah.
the caller that it's a private contractor doing the work because it's guaranteed through the manufacturer.
Yeah.
But I don't think it went over well. It's just,
Yeah.
and there's
I
facts
understand
know.
that it's frustrating because, we have new hydrants, relatively new, and there's a product failure from the manufacturer with the nozzles. I'll call their corporate office.
Thank you.
Let's see if we can get it moving. I know Steve's been staying on them, Steve Pierce at the water utility, but maybe I'll make some calls as well. At Harrison and Homestead, we'll look.
Yeah, I think Homestead is what they told me.
Okay.
There's a bag on there.
Yeah, we'll look into that one. Sherwood Forest, Brian, you have an update on that?
Yeah, we mentioned that a little bit earlier. Thomasella Drive, the basin, we had Dave reviewing the documents, reviewing the bond estimate. So by the end of the week, we should have an answer there as far as a revised bond amount and a bond amount for that
And I guess
basin.
all his work on that will come out of their escrow account also, I'm assuming, correct? So the city does not pay for that part
Right,
of
since
his.
it's a private development and it's still under bond and they're still on
So
escrow.
his bill will just get billed right to them.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I think I skipped over to Marlin Terrace Stormwater. I did speak with Mike McDowell today. We're going to schedule to get the backhoe out there. And, we'll have a meeting, probably Wayne Gressman, myself, Mike McDowell, Commissioner Sui, if you're available, to go over like a short construction sequence to take out those 12-inch concrete pipes out there. Put a section of 24 in. There's a closed depression or drainage, a small drainage basin out there. We'll discharge into that, maybe have a little swale just for an outlet. That'll help, lower that flood elevation on Marlin Terrace. So we are moving forward with that. Anything for Field of Dreams, Brian?
No more progress since
Okay.
last time. Yeah.
How about the bikeway?
Oh yeah, the Marsh River Bikeway project. That's a grant project. That's the federal funding. Last meeting we adopted those guidelines. I submitted that up to the DOT. Since they needed that, so that was just part of their process, and we're going to be submitting a quarterly report to them as well, and that's part of the grant process, one of the requirements. So that one's moving forward. While we're on grant projects, 3rd Street, that one's under construction now. They are, 3rd from 49 up to Broad. They're closed. The project's closed down for the winter for now. They've submitted their first invoice, so we're just field checking the quantities for their initial payment. So probably by next meeting we'll have that for payment for them. And the other grant project in progress. Actually, last week we received bids for Vine Street. We're reviewing those bids. Likely by next meeting we'll recommend an award. There was 4 contractors that bid for this Vine Street project. The low bid was $154,228.25. That was the apparent low bidder. Think Pavers Outdoor Living. They're out of Mount Royal, New Jersey, and the high bid was $210,000. and change. Our grant is actually for $200,000, so we're well within that. Like I said, the 17th we'll look to award that based on our review.
And Brian, what is the scope of the Vine Street project? Is it going from Buck to Third?
It goes from High Street to Third Street. The majority of the work is focused on right in front of the college. That's where going to be the continuation of the decorative pavers, decorative lighting, some benches. Actually, a lot of the landscaping has been put in as part of the college project, but there's still some landscaping in that. And then just more minor curb work and concrete work in the block between Second and Third.
Thank you.
And then what do you do, deduct what the college did off of the grant price? Because you can't give the college the money for what they did.
Right.
So you would deduct off the $200,000 the work that they did, because it would have been in your scope, so the grant won't be as high as $200,000.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that officially would work. Well, we don't,
Right.
like say, the low bid was $154,000. I mean, we only take that, there'll be what, 46,000 left in the grants.
But
right?
we
So
might have
that-
to,
An alternate that deducts, that takes it off of the contract.
Right, and that's what that 154.
so that'll come off of the 200.
It'll come off the 154, it'll never get submitted for grant.
All right, so we still have, because I didn't know how much it would reduce the 200,000.
I think that would
Yeah, okay.
remain. But in the past, and depending, we have multiple projects going on at a time. If there's some grant money left on the table, you can request
Switch it.
money to be transferred to a project. If you have, I think we did that for one of the sidewalk projects on Cedarville Road. We're actually on Glenside. I think there was extra on Cedarville Road, and we applied that to the Glenside project, so we didn't have to, incur as much funding on the city's end.
So you would just have to submit an addendum or something, and then you could do it as long as it somewhat follows what the grant is for another area of town.
Yeah, there's a process through the DOT local aid office. You can submit the request, and it has to go through a resolution. You guys would have to approve it. If it worked out that way, I mean, we have the Third Street project. If depending if there's no large change orders on this and there's some money left on the table, we might be able to work with that so that to optimize those funds.
Is there plans for additional lighting on Vine between Second and Third?
Not at this time. This funding was through the DOT, but it was called it was a Safe Streets to Transit funding, and one of the criteria for that was there's actually a bus stop in that area, and they want to kind of join the Clay College, the bus terminal, but yeah, there was no plans at this time for that. Yeah. Maybe future fundings we can qualify for something.
Thank you, Brian.
One thing, Commissioner, I did forget to mention one thing on the wastewater treatment plant project. There are some potential change orders that we're evaluating right now. So I may have to bring forth, that to the commission, for a vote at some point if there is a change order. So right now, there may be a $0 change order. We're not sure yet for rerouting a waste line from the east side of the sludge processing building into the western side, which will open up areas of the old gravity belt thickeners for maintenance areas. Right now, there's risers coming up out of the concrete floor that run across the ceiling space. They're in the way of maintenance that could be done there. So we're looking at a shorter route. So I'm putting together a little drawing to send it to AECOM just to get their opinion. And that's just the way the process will work. Is if there is a change, I'll look at it and see if it makes sense from the owner's point of view. It just can't be for the contractors, to save money or reduce their time. It has to have some benefit for the owner. So I'm looking at those things, and if they get to be on a PCO list, I'll brief everybody on what's on the list. Right now, there's really nothing official on the list except adding in the surface wasting components, the floating skimmers that were taken out of the contract before. We don't have a formal presentation for that yet. That would help to control the nocardia foaming and the filaments on the tank. So adding that back in, we're looking at the engineering of that.
You're aware of our purchasing change order policy?
Right. Yeah. That's why I would want to bring it forth to the commission. Even though it's a large contract, 5%, gets eaten up pretty quick. I think that's the end of our report, Commissioners.
Thank you. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
Very good. Kind of short. We kind of appreciate that.
I'm trying to
They
make
were
it
all
short.
thinking of it, but they didn't want to say it, so I had to say it. So thank you.
Progress.
Thank you. Department of Revenue and Finance.
I just had a question about the professional service contract for Robert Beery. I didn't know if that was necessary, or if we could just hire somebody on an as-needed basis. When I was reading one of the reports that Brock gave us, I was a little concerned about some of the comments that were made in it.
By Very or?
Yeah, by Beery.
I think he's a very good professional. I know the guy personally. I think he does a great job for the police department, and I'd like to keep him on.
Yeah, at some point, might you need someone, like at different levels, depending on what the discipline is? Or do you always feel police chief's sufficient?
Yes.
That was it.
Anything else? Department of Public Safety, progress on that. New business, please.
Okay, so Verizon is requesting to install small antenna transmitters on telephone poles, and that's just a discussion item. I think Brock can elaborate on that.
I think I addressed this in an email to the Board of Commissioners. You may have reviewed that. And the concern I know that some other municipalities are having is that they already have antenna for cell transmission on top of, they're co-located on top of, for example, municipal water towers. And so I know there's a concern that maybe the reason the phone companies want to put these new monopoles up is so that they don't have to renew those leases. And the whole point of the ordinance that we have, and I know that another town has an ordinance similar to ours, is not, you can't eliminate these antenna. They have to be permitted, and our ordinance permits them in all zones as a conditional use, but it does encourage and require that they be co-located. In other words, that they be concentrated in one area, and that they not be just willy-nilly all over your town. And one of the concerns, I think, would be that they would be putting these up. Basically, it's a telephone pole, and it has a antenna up on top of it. They would be putting these up all over the place. So, I don't know if the League of Municipalities is taking a position on this. I know it's an issue in almost every town in South Jersey right now.
Did it say we don't have a lot of choice, though, when I was reading that?
Well, they try to say that, but
Okay.
we do have an ordinance. So I think what they, from what I've reviewed, I think they would actually need to make an application to the planning board or possibly the zoning board, because it's a conditional use, depending upon whether or not they're satisfying the conditions.
Is there any way we can charge them a monthly fee for each pole they put up? And then that'll offset the cost.
Well, you can't do that because these poles they would own the pole. So we wouldn't be able to charge them a fee like we can if they put an antenna on top of our water tower.
Right.
We have a
It's
lease
our
agreement for that.
property.
Gotta be a way around that.
Now, I know there was a concern in Woodbine where they actually wanted to terminate their lease agreement. Woodbine has a water tower, and then they want to put these telephone poles up all over town, all
Which
over
would
the
be
borough.
free.
Which, sure, would be free. You can't, and in fact,
Can't lease the ground, huh?
when I was at a meeting And there was a presentation made in another town, it wasn't Woodbine. I asked that question. I said, is there any way that there would be a lease involved with this? And I was told no. I
What
mean,
about
they
an
don't have to pay
application
that.
fee for each pole, or whatever you wanna call it? Administrative fee. Yeah,
But we
it should
do
be just
have
like
an-
a construction permit, can't we?
What do they do with the electric company? When the electric company puts their poles in, are there fees for those?
I don't think so. I think they have the right
Yeah, so you
to,
can't.
they have the right to
It's
erect
an
those.
electric company.
Yeah.
Well, it's still utility.
Don't fight about it.
Oh.
But I think it's not like we need an ordinance. We have an ordinance that regulates them already. I think it is legal. And so I think they need to comply with the
Status quo.
ordinance. That would be my position.
So we just wait and see what happens then?
Yeah, and advise them if they make an inquiry that, this is what our land use code says, and you have to comply with that.
What was that?
Any other
I'm
okay.
sorry, I just one other when they were trying to do the cameras, originally the Millville Housing Authority was gonna put the cameras up, and there was a big deal about the poles and use of the poles and who could use, and,
They were
that
Atlantic
fell
City-
through.
They were Atlantic
I
City
know, it
Electric
was a little
poles.
bit different, and we couldn't put any cameras up because Atlantic City Electric wouldn't cooperate.
Right, they own the poles, and
Right.
these
So
poles will
wondering-
be owned by Verizon. And from what I understand, they can't. They could use an existing pole, but if you read their literature, sounds like they're going to be installing their own poles. So you're going to have a lot more
New
telephone
utility
poles, and we're not. They own the pole,
It's both.
and then you're not going to be co-locating these antennae. And then the other thing is, this is Verizon. Now, will Sprint want to do the same thing, and they're going to want to put theirs all over the place?
Mhm.
Rob, if the short towns are now going underground with the wires, would some ordinance be done that way?
Well, you can do.
Not allow them to put more poles in everywhere?
You could do that. Obviously, that's expensive when you put utilities underground. But I think the purpose of our ordinance is to make them co-locate these things all in one place, such as on water towers and things like that.
Just we could deal with
Thank you, Brock.
electric and use their poles, that's what they'll do.
Okay.
Probably do.
New business item 2 is Superior Court of New Jersey Criminal Justice Reform discussion.
We had just gotten the letter from Judge Curio, and I just wanted to make sure that everything was in place, and I know the police department is probably gonna have more, is it gonna be more cumbersome for the officers? Is it gonna cause a problem?
The meetings that I've been to, that were put on by the prosecutor's office, they're estimating that a police officer will be off the street another 20, 25 minutes. I don't agree with that.
You think more?
I think it would be more. But then we'll see. It's in place. I don't think anybody has used it yet as of today. But there's going to be some times where things are going to go nicely and times where things are not going to go so nicely. So it's going to be trial and error. We're going to have to see what happens. I know that they're going to hire additional judges. I know that's in play. They're supposed to hire additional judges to help this. So we're just going to see what happens. I'm not too keen on it, but it may work. Who knows? We just got to wait and see. Trial and error. I understand. I know.
In essence,
So-
what it is, so everybody understands, the old-fashioned procedure, and the mayor can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm a little rusty on these things, would be that if there was an arrest made, I think the officer would talk to the clerk or possibly a municipal court judge who would establish whether or not there would be a warrant, and if so, what the bail would be. And then the bail would be monetary, and to get out of jail, you'd have to either post the bail, or if you got a bail bondsman, you would post 10% of it and post a bail bond. This is an effort to do away with that, and to have some type of a risk assessment done by a whole different layer of bureaucracy. I think that's going to be partly composed of maybe some additional superior court judges like the mayor mentioned, but also I saw an order when I was reading the Law Journal yesterday. Our judge was listed in that order. So the municipal court judges are gonna, I think, require more training, and I think there's gonna be more work for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Weekend calls.
And I would imagine the police are gonna have more work too.
Well, just like you're saying, in the process, the officer would do the complaint, you would call
Yeah.
the city the clerk,
Yeah.
and she would approve it or disapprove it. Now, there's like 3 other steps added to that has to go through. There has to be an approval rate. If it doesn't go through the computer system, it gets kicked back, and you have to redo it. So
And
it's
probation,
gonna
I
take a
think,
lot of time.
and I think probation's involved in this too,
Yes,
aren't they?
yes.
And they weren't, previously really weren't
Right.
involved that much.
Yeah, you'll get a status as to the person that you have arrested, whether or not do they have a background with violations is the same they're being charged or more severe. So there's a lot of different hurdles that you have to go over before you can lodge the person in jail. So trial and error, we'll see what happens.
And more work for the police department.
Yeah.
And greater expense for the taxpayer.
It sounds like,
It doesn't, I don't agree with keeping the officers off the street longer.
Right.
You know, this is our system, so we'll have to follow it for now.
This is the result of feel-good legislation that, they passed it on a wait-and-see basis.
Exactly.
And I think we saw the same thing with the ACA. Let's pass this and we'll see how it works. Well, so we know the results of that. And this is going to be just another very expensive law that's going to take years and years to overturn because everybody's got to get their hands in it first. It's a bad idea then, and it's a bad idea now, but we're stuck with it.
Anything else? No one else? We now go into the public portion, part of this meeting. Anyone that would like to address the commission, please go to the podium, state your name, your address, and your concerns, and please limit your comments to approximately 5 minutes. Okay, Larry?
Since Wayne's still here. I don't have questions. Larry Malone, Geisel Drive. Since you're still here, can you go back? Maybe you have some knowledge from a restaurant's point of view, putting in a grease trap as far as what's involved. Like I know with one restaurant, it's just within there's no outside because it takes up the whole lot. So it would have to be an indoor thing. What's the cost? What's involved in setting up grease traps?
Well, it depends on the flow rate. You have to go through a calculation sheet of the size of it according to the drain size. And they have under-counter grease interceptors. They also have ones that are buried in the floor. The building. They have an interceptor that can go outside of the building as well. And if there's no room on the outside, it would have to be either under the counter or in the floor, that kind of interceptor. Now, the problem with the ones inside is they're smaller, they need to get pumped out more frequently, they're higher maintenance.
Huh?
They work, just as well if you take care of them. A lot of restaurants have them.
One of my Wawas had an indoor one, and you had to clear it. It smelled terrible. Like it just destroyed the building for a few minutes. But so there's a cost of installing it and pumping it.
And pumping it, yeah.
So and you don't know what the cost would be.
Each site would be different.
How about level of a restaurant? Like if it's a pizzeria or something, all restaurants, no matter what.
I think all types of restaurants have some kind of oil or grease discharge, just from the cooking process, preparation of foods. Of course, some have a lot more than others. At home, if you cook at home, a lot of oil and grease. Some people use it lightly.
Yeah.
Some use it more. Italian or different foods. Different types.
Thank you, Larry.
All right, thanks.
Anyone else? Seeing no one else, we close the public portion part of this meeting for public comments. Comments of commissioners. Commissioner Davis.
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Sui.
Nothing.
Commissioner Perry.
progress.
And myself, progress. Going to resolution.
Okay, we have a resolution authorizing an executive session for the following matter. The sewer department for exemption, public safety, and potential litigation.
Move the resolution.
Second,
Any questions? Roll call.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Pereka-Compari?
yes.
Commissioner Sui?
Yes.
Mayor Santiago?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We'll be back.